It was supposed to be a celebration. My father's 60th birthday. A big milestone, one he'd been hinting at since last year, like he was expecting someone to rent out a yacht and get him a Rolex. He didn't get the yacht or the Rolex, but he did get a private room at a fancy steakhouse and a 3-course meal that cost more than my first car. Paid for by yours truly. Not that anyone acknowledged that. The moment I walked in, I knew the tone of the night. It wasn't anything specific, just that tightness in the air, the fake smiles that cracked too quickly, the way no one looked too long in my direction. I wore my best suit, showed up on time, and brought a bottle of scotch I knew my dad liked. He took it, said, "Huh," and handed it to my uncle without even a thank you. That was the vibe. There were 14 of us. My parents, my brother Andrew and his wife, our cousins, a couple of uncles, my Aunt Clara, who I swear hasn't liked me since 1999, and some extra people I barely recognized but who all seemed to think they had a license to comment on my life. We were midway through dinner, steaks bleeding on porcelain plates, champagne glasses sweating, my mom buzzing about how Andrew and Melissa were trying for a second baby, when it happened. The moment that blew a hole through our family dynamic and torched whatever fragile peace we'd maintained up until that point. Everyone was laughing at some dumb story Andrew was telling about that one time in college, when he got drunk and locked himself out of his dorm, a story I've heard approximately 1 billion times, when my dad, who had been oddly quiet all night, set his fork down with a deliberate clink and said, "So, Alex, be honest. What does it feel like to be a 32-year-old failure with no wife, no kids, and nothing to show but a laptop and a lonely apartment?" The laughter didn't stop. It just shifted. Some people laughed harder. Aunt Clara did that wheezy thing she does when she's enjoying someone else's discomfort. My cousin snorted into her wine. Andrew chuckled and gave me that look like, "Hey, he said it, not me." Even my mom didn't say anything. Just dabbed her mouth and looked down like she hadn't heard. And me? I stared at my dad. My heart was pounding so loud I couldn't even hear the clink of cutlery around the table anymore. But I didn't raise my voice. Didn't flinch. Didn't let the heat crawling up my neck show on my face. I just smiled. Lifted my glass, sipped my wine slowly, and placed it down. Then I said, in the calmest voice I've ever used in my life, "What does it feel like knowing that this failure is going to stop paying your bills starting tomorrow?" The silence that followed could have frozen fire. I stood up, placed my napkin on my plate like it was any other Tuesday night, and walked out. No yelling. No dramatic speech. Just calm, deliberate steps toward the door. I didn't look back. But I heard them. The confusion. The stammering. My mother's sharp inhale. Andrew saying, "Wait, what?" like he was the main character in a soap opera. It was the most powerful moment of my life. And it was only the beginning. Because that moment wasn't impulsive. It was planned. The strike of a match I'd been holding between my fingers for years, waiting for the exact moment to light. They thought I was weak. They thought I needed them. They forgot who really held the cards. And now? They were about to learn exactly what it meant to lose their golden goose. Because this failure had receipts. And I was done staying quiet. Growing up, I didn't have a terrible childhood. Just one that constantly reminded me I was not the favorite. My brother Andrew was born with a halo over his head and a pedestal already waiting for him in the living room. He didn't earn his golden status, he was born into it. From the moment he could walk, everything he did was magic. If he drew a crooked sun with purple grass, it got taped to the fridge like it was Monet. I brought home an award-winning essay. My dad said, "Hope it wasn't plagiarized." That was our family dynamic in a nutshell. If Andrew sneezed, my mom made soup. If I got a fever? "You'll walk it off, Alex." He failed a math test once, and my parents hired a private tutor. I got straight A's and was told not to show off. At 13, Andrew got a new gaming console for his birthday. At 14, I got socks, and a passive-aggressive card that said, "It's time you started thinking practically." They loved me. I'm sure they did. But they didn't respect me. It wasn't dramatic abuse. It was worse. It was constant, quiet invalidation. The kind you can't point to in therapy without sounding petty, but it buries itself deep in your wiring. So I stopped expecting things. I learned how to disappear. In high school, I taught myself coding late at night using free YouTube tutorials and a second-hand laptop that overheated every hour. No one noticed. They were too busy clapping for Andrew's mediocre baseball games like he was in the MLB. By 17, I was already building simple websites for local businesses under a fake agency name. By 18, I was accepted into a top-tier engineering program. I showed my dad the acceptance letter. He skimmed it, shrugged, and said, "Don't go wasting money on some degree if you're just going to drop out." Andrew was going to school for sports marketing. He failed 2 semesters. Still got his rent paid, his groceries delivered, his gas tank filled by Dad. Just to help him out. Meanwhile, I was delivering DoorDash between classes just to keep the lights on. I never asked them for a penny. Not even once. They never offered. And I convinced myself I didn't need them. At 23, I launched my first real app, a productivity tool that went semi-viral thanks to a lucky tweet from a tech influencer. I turned that into a small business. I hired 3 freelancers, got an accountant, and by 26, I had enough income to pay off my student loans and move into a nice apartment in the city. That's when the calls started. Subtle at first. My mom mentioning how the mortgage has been a bit high lately. My dad sighing about unexpected car repairs. Andrew needing just a little help with a new business venture. It's gonna be huge, bro. I didn't bite at first. Then I got soft. I paid 1 bill. Then another. Then a few more. Suddenly I was covering their mortgage, paying my dad's truck lease, and sending monthly gifts into my mom's account for her medications and groceries. Andrew? He racked up over $18,000 in debt trying to launch a fitness subscription box. My parents begged me to help him. "He's just under pressure, Alex. He's trying." I paid it. And they still treated me like a backup. I was the financial foundation of a house I wasn't allowed to sit in. The irony? They told people Andrew was doing well in business, even though I was the one funding his survival. I saw a post once on my mom's Facebook. "Proud of my boys. One a family man, the other a digital wizard." A digital wizard. That's what I was. Not a son. Not a success. Just a utility. But I kept paying. Why? Because I was waiting. Waiting for the moment they'd pushed too far. Waiting for the moment the disrespect would come out in public, in front of witnesses, and I could finally give them what they deserved. That moment came on my dad's 60th birthday. And they didn't realize that when I stood up from that dinner table, I wasn't just leaving the restaurant. I was cutting them off. The walk from that restaurant to the parking garage felt surreal. Like I'd slipped out of a bad movie halfway through the screening. I didn't cry. Didn't rage. I just walked. My hands were cold, but my mind was sharp, clearer than it had been in years. My dad thought he was being funny, thought humiliating me in front of 14 people was just good old-fashioned banter. What he didn't know was that I'd spent the last year quietly preparing for this moment. I wasn't just the guy covering his bills. I was the reason his lifestyle even functioned. He'd assumed, as usual, that the money would always come. That his forgotten son, the failure with a laptop, would just keep silently wiring cash while they laughed over wine. But that night, the taps were closing. For good. The first thing I did when I got home? I opened my laptop. Not to vent. Not to post some cryptic status. Just business. I pulled up my accounts. The mortgage autopay on their house. Cancelled. The lease payment on Dad's truck? Terminated. The monthly support to Mom's account labeled medical? Gone. Each click felt like a wire snapping loose from a drowning ship. I didn't do it recklessly. I knew they had bills coming. I just didn't care anymore. They wanted to treat me like a disposable joke? Cool. Then they could live without the perks of my failure. Next came Andrew. I logged into the joint business account I had set up to help him with his wellness brand. He had full access. But the funds? 90% of it had come from me. I left just enough to cover outstanding invoices, then pulled the rest. I sent him one text. Your business is now your responsibility. Best of luck. No threats. No explanations. No follow-up. Let them guess. Let them feel what it was like to wake up and realize their safety net had ripped out from under them. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls. 3 from my dad. 5 from my mom. 9 from Andrew. Voicemails too. Ranging from confused and curious to furious and insulted. My mom's voice cracked on one of them. Alex, I think something happened with the mortgage. Did the bank make a mistake? I'm sure it's nothing. Call me back. Dad's tone was colder. This better be a glitch. I don't know what you're playing at, but you're being real immature. Andrew, of course, went full panic mode. Dude! Where the hell is the money? I have packages that need to go out. You can't just pull this without notice. Are you serious right now? Yes. I was very serious. By lunchtime, I had an email from my mother. A long one. The subject line? We need to talk about what you did. I didn't open it. Just archived it. She knew what I did. And deep down, she knew why. That night I finally got a call I picked up. It was my father. His voice was tense, like a man trying not to lose his grip on the last thread of control. You've made your point, he said. But you need to be careful, Alex. This family depends on you. I paused, smiled, and said, No, Dad. You depend on me. And that's the part that's over. He was quiet for a second. Then, in a voice dripping with condescension, he muttered, So you're just gonna leave us hanging? After everything we've done for you? I almost laughed. You mean like mocking me in front of the family? Like ignoring me for years unless you needed money? You've done so much, Dad. Click. I hung up. And for the first time since I was a teenager, I felt free. The day after I cut them off, my phone went quiet. No calls. No messages. Not even Andrew's usual. Can you just Venmo me real quick? Nonsense. I expected an explosion. A family-wide freakout. But instead I got stillness. Which was worse. It wasn't peace. It was the eye of the storm, the kind of eerie calm that always comes right before something breaks. I spent the day working like nothing happened. Finished 2 investor reports. Took a call with my accountant. Hit the gym. Made dinner. But I couldn't stop checking my phone. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I knew better. I was waiting for the next move. It came that night, around 9 p.m. I was reading, halfway through a book I'd been too busy to finish for months, when the doorbell rang. I froze. Not a knock. The doorbell. 1 ring. Then silence. I walked slowly to the door and looked through the peephole. It was my brother, Andrew. Standing there in a hoodie, looking like a man who'd just learned Santa wasn't real. I opened the door just a crack. He didn't wait for an invite. Just shoved his way in and said, You need to stop whatever power trip you're on. No, hi. No, can we talk? Just full-blown entitlement walking through my home like he still had access. I didn't move. You've got 2 minutes, I said, before I walk you out. He scoffed. What's your problem, man? You embarrassed Dad in front of everyone. Then you go nuclear on the finances? You realize Mom was crying all day? You're acting like a damn sociopath. I let that sit. Because here's the thing about people like Andrew, they love to rewrite reality in real time. He wasn't angry because I was cruel. He was angry because for the first time in his life, I wasn't available. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and handed it to him. He didn't take it. So I drank it. Then I said, "You called me a failure in front of 14 people. You laughed. You've used me as your personal ATM for 4 years. What exactly am I supposed to feel guilty about?" He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Instead, he pivoted. "Okay, look. Maybe that was over the line. But Dad was drinking. You know how he gets. And yeah, you've helped, and we appreciate it. But you can't just yank the rug out without warning. Andrew," I said, staring him dead in the eye, "when someone treats you like trash long enough, you stop acting like the garbage man." That hit him. He looked around my apartment like he'd never really seen it before. Like it had never clicked that I wasn't just the weird one who works online. That I was successful. Independent. A whole-ass adult with boundaries. Then came the real reason for the visit. "Look," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm not saying you're wrong. But things are tight right now. My credit's maxed out, and I've got inventory sitting. If I don't ship this week, I'll tank." There it was. The ask? I leaned on the counter and just said, "That's not my problem." He blinked. "Are you serious? After everything?" I smiled. "Exactly. After everything." He didn't stay long after that. Stormed out, muttering something about how I was letting money get to my head. As if money was the issue. It wasn't. It was respect. And they had none for me, not until the money dried up. 2 days after Andrew stormed out of my apartment, the first Facebook post went up. It was my mother. A sweet-looking photo of my dad sitting in their living room, holding a mug and looking tired but noble. The caption? "Getting older is hard, especially when those closest to you forget who supported them first. We've always tried our best. That's all we could do. Broken heart." I didn't need to be tagged. I was the subtext. The comments rolled in. "Sending love, and Marcia. You two are the most generous people I know. Whoever hurt you doesn't deserve you. Families should stick together, that's so sad." I didn't reply. Didn't engage. I knew the game. They wanted to control the narrative. To paint me as the cold, ungrateful son who abandoned his family after getting rich and forgetting his roots. But here's the thing, they forgot I was a quiet collector of evidence. Every transaction, every email request, every "Can you just help with one more thing?" I had it all. And while I had no interest in airing it out for the world, I wasn't about to let them rewrite history unchecked. That same evening, I got a call from an old family friend, Mr. Donahue, my dad's former business partner. A kind man. We hadn't spoken in years. "Alex," he said gently, "I don't want to intrude, but your mom reached out. She said something about a falling out. Just wanted to check if you're okay." I was silent for a moment. Then said, "Let me guess. She told you I'm cutting them off out of nowhere, right?" He hesitated. "Something like that." "I'm fine," I said. "But I'm done being used." He sighed. I figured there was more to the story. We talked for 15 minutes. By the end of the call, I could hear it in his voice. The truth had cracked through the narrative. One down. Dozens to go. The next move came from my father. A text this time. No punctuation. All lowercase. A little too casual to be real. "If you want to fix this, we can talk. But if not, you're not the son I thought you were." I didn't respond. But I did open my notes app and add it to the growing archive titled "Receipts for When They Lie Again." Because if this was going to turn public, I wasn't going to fight fire with fire. I was going to fight lies with proof. 3 days after that, I got a call from Melissa, my cousin who'd been at the dinner. "Hey, weird question. Did you actually stop paying their mortgage?" I paused. "Yes." She sighed. "Okay. I figured. They're telling everyone you did it to hurt them." I didn't laugh. I just said, "No. I did it because they hurt me. Big difference." Then she said something that surprised me. I just wanted to say, "I saw what happened at that dinner. What Dad said? It wasn't okay. And I respect the hell out of you for standing up. A rare moment of clarity from inside the fog. One voice. One small crack in the wall. And for the first time, I felt it. They were losing control. The silence wasn't working. The guilt wasn't working. And now the smear campaign? That wasn't working either. So I knew what was coming next. The ultimatum. It came in the form of a text from my mother. Dinner at our place. Sunday. Family only. Let's talk like adults. I stared at it for a while. No apology. No explanation. Just the usual passive-aggressive summons dressed up like diplomacy. I considered ignoring it. Blocking the number. Staying home and ordering sushi like a sane person. But something told me to go. Not to reconcile. Not to forgive. To finish it. To say out loud, with witnesses, what I'd let slide for years. I RSVP'd with one word. Sure. When I showed up, the dining room looked like it had been lifted out of a Pottery Barn catalog. Candlelight. Matching napkins. Wine already poured. The whole thing was too polished, like they were expecting a camera crew. Everyone was there. Andrew and his wife. Aunt Clara. Uncle Brian. Even a few cousins who hadn't spoken to me since the graduation barbecue where Andrew, accidentally, spilled wine on my laptop. It wasn't a dinner. It was a setup. I walked in, gave a polite nod, and took a seat at the far end of the table. My dad stood, wineglass in hand, and cleared his throat like he was starting a board meeting. We've all had a rough couple of weeks, he began. But we're family. And family doesn't abandon each other. There it was. The performance. My mother chimed in next. We may have made mistakes, we're not perfect. But it's time to put things behind us. What matters is that we move forward together. Andrew leaned in. We're just asking for basic support, man. You've got the resources. Why let ego ruin everything? That's when I realized what this really was. Not an apology. Not a reconciliation. A rebranding. They wanted to drag me back into the role I played for years. The quiet son, the silent bank, the dependable one who didn't cause trouble. But they didn't know I had come prepared. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small folder. No theatrics. No build-up. I opened it and slid out a stack of documents. I brought something for everyone, I said calmly. Bank statements. Transfers. Mortgage payment records. Business transactions. Every dollar I've contributed to this family over the last 6 years. I placed the folder on the center of the table. Dead silence. My dad's hand froze midair. Andrew looked like someone had turned off his oxygen supply. I kept going. I've paid for this family's house, 2 vehicles, Andrew's business debts, your condo maintenance, and Mom's healthcare, while being treated like I'm one step above the family dog. Alex, my mom started, eyes darting to the others. We didn't mean. Don't, I cut in. You meant it. Every passive dig. Every joke about me being single. Every time you dismissed what I do because it didn't come with a suit and tie. I looked straight at my father. You mocked me at dinner in front of the entire family. You humiliated me. You treated my success like a fluke. And when I finally stood up for myself, you acted like you were the victims. No one moved. The only sound in the room was the candle flickering. I stood up, adjusted my jacket, and said, I'm done being your plan B. Done being your invisible lifeline. If you want to live like a family, start acting like one. That starts with respect, not guilt, not manipulation, and definitely not staged interventions. I turned to leave, but then paused at the doorway. Oh, and Andrew? He looked up, pale. If your little startup wants to survive, I suggest you actually learn to run a business. Because I've already spoken to the bank. The joint account is closed. You're on your own now. He didn't say a word. I walked out the front door, leaving the silence behind me, the same silence they always fed me, now returned in full. But this time, it was on my terms. It started with a group text from Andrew, sent 2 days after the dinner. Andrew: just so you know, Dad's blood pressure spiked. Nice job stressing him out. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another came in. Andrew: Mom's crying every day. You happy now? And still, I didn't reply. Because I finally understood something. Their suffering wasn't my fault. It was the consequence of removing my support they never respected, just expected. That's the difference they never learned. When someone chooses to help you, you treat it as a gift, not a guarantee. I heard through my cousin Melissa that they were struggling. Dad was trying to refinance the house but couldn't get approved. Mom had to switch her healthcare plan, and the co-pays were piling up. Andrew's wellness business, which was really just overpriced water bottles with his initials on them, shut down completely. He posted some vague statement about supply chain issues on Instagram, but I knew the truth. Without my money propping it up, he couldn't afford to fulfill half his pending orders. He even messaged me directly. Andrew: I'm willing to forgive everything if you can just front me $5,000 to float the next batch. Just 5. You know I'll pay you back. That one made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because of the word he used. Forgive. He was willing to forgive me? The guy who had carried his entire lifestyle while he played pretend entrepreneur. I archived the message and went for a walk. That week, I started doing something I hadn't done in years. I lived for myself. I upgraded my apartment. Nothing ridiculous, just a place with more light, more space, and a kitchen that didn't make me feel like I was stuck in a hallway. I booked a solo trip to Japan, something I'd always wanted to do but had delayed every year because of some family emergency. Plane ticket, hotel, all locked in. And I started therapy. Because while it was satisfying to cut them off, the truth is, being treated like an afterthought your whole life leaves scars. My therapist, Nadia, listened quietly as I unloaded a decade of buried resentment in our first session. She looked at me and said, "You've spent so much of your life trying not to be a burden, you let yourself be used instead." That one hit hard. But she was right. I had confused being selfless with being silent. Helpful with invisible. Successful with indispensable. And now, I wasn't any of those things to them. And I was finally okay with it. The final straw came in the form of a voicemail. It was my dad. His voice was low. Strained. Maybe tired. Maybe just angry that his favorite chess piece walked off the board. "You've made your choice. But you're going to regret this. One day you'll need us. And we won't be there." I played it twice. Then deleted it. Because that's the part he never understood. I've never had them. And somehow, I made it anyway. 6 weeks after I walked out of that dinner, I got another text from my mother. "Your father's birthday was hard without you here. He misses you, even if he won't say it. Think about what you're doing to this family." I read it while drinking coffee on my balcony, sun coming up over a skyline I used to think I didn't deserve. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because for once, I wasn't doing anything to them. I was just no longer doing everything for them. That difference used to keep me up at night. Now, it let me sleep. I thought cutting them off would feel like rage, like revenge, like fire. But it felt like quiet. Not the uncomfortable, heavy silence I grew up with, the kind you choke on. But the good kind. The kind that fills your lungs when you realize no one's going to guilt you today. That your phone won't ring unless you want it to. That your energy, your work, your money, your peace, all of it, belongs to you now. It was the silence of being free. Melissa, the cousin who saw through it all, and I grabbed coffee one morning. She'd heard the family was still talking. Mostly about me, mostly bitter. "You're like the Voldemort of the group chat," she joked. "He who must not be named, but definitely discussed." I laughed for real. The kind of laugh that doesn't taste bitter on the way out. She leaned in, a little more serious. "I think what you did took guts. Nobody ever calls them out. I didn't call them out, I said. I just finally stopped picking up when they called me in. She nodded slowly. Still. Took guts. That weekend I hosted a dinner. My first real one. Just a few people. No parents. No Andrew. No fake toasts or forced smiles. Just my chosen circle. Friends who had seen the ugly parts. Coworkers who respected my time. My therapist, Nadia, even came by. Yes, we were cool like that. We drank wine. Ate too much pasta. Argued about movies. Laughed so hard we cried. Nobody asked when I was getting married. Nobody told me I was a disappointment. Nobody looked at me like I was a tool. They just looked at me. Like I was enough. The next morning, I sat on the balcony again, the city waking up around me. And I thought about that night. The dinner. The wine. The silence that came after. I thought about how I'd spent years twisting myself into a shape my family never respected. About how I kept trying to earn love that was always conditional. And I thought about that moment, that one single moment, when my father laughed at me in front of everyone, and how I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't beg. I just told the truth. What does it feel like to know this failure is going to stop paying your bills? And that right there? That was the first real sentence I'd ever spoken as my own man. I haven't spoken to them since. I might never. But I'm no longer waiting. Not for an apology. Not for validation. Not to be seen. I see myself now. And after a lifetime of being the punchline. That feels like the best kind of ending.